Hi there, Steve Coffin here. I want to make a video in response to a video that I received from Lucas from Brazil. And he posted this video in response to one of my recent videos, and I'll see if I can somehow hook this up to this video in some way. But he says, and he speaks very good English as a young man from Brazil, he says, I enjoyed learning English, and he speaks it very well, and he studied at Link. And he learned Italian, and after a few weeks or months, he was doing very well. But now he works for a company in Brazil that has a lot of dealings with international companies or customers, most of whom are Spanish speakers. So he spent now a few months using Link and reading and listening, but his ability to speak Spanish hasn't improved. Whereas he saw remarkable improvement in his English and his Italian. What can be the reason? And I thought that was very interesting. And my belief is, without having had the chance to really ask Lucas a lot of questions, my belief is that he's not very motivated to speak Spanish because Spanish is so similar to Portuguese. And very often we don't realize it that we are sort of not motivated to do some certain things. This is particularly the case with pronunciation with accents. I know that when I listen to Brazilian Portuguese, I find myself not wanting to pronounce the T as a ch, uh, bom dia and that kind of stuff. Even though I know that is how it's pronounced, I'm not, because I speak Spanish and because I've listened to a lot of European Portuguese, and nor do I speak like a European Portuguese either. I'm sort of hung. I kind of stick with my Spanish. I see myself reluctant to let go of that Spanish because the languages are so similar. I just won't let go. And I see this with people in their pronunciation. I mentioned in another video my father, who would always say Nova Scotia instead of Nova Scotia. And I've seen this with, you'll sometimes find learners who are native speakers of German or of Spanish or Chinese, and they'll quote you, proverbs translated from their own language in order to explain something in English. And they think that's very good because they like their own thing, and it's normal. You have a certain attachment to. It's an emotional attachment either to your own language or, say, in the case of my speaking Spanish and Portuguese, I'm quite comfortable with my Spanish pronunciation, and so to start pronouncing essentially the same words in quite a different way is something that I'm at some level reluctant to do. My emotions are getting in the way. Whereas if it's a totally different language, I just go for it 100%. It's totally make believe, imaginary. I'm playing some strange role, and so I'm not held back. So I think this can be the case with very similar languages. Like if I speak English, I could live in Texas or Scotland for 20 years. I wouldn't change how I speak, or I might be slightly influenced by it, but not very much. I'm comfortable with it. I'm not going to change it. Whereas a foreigner moving into any of those areas would probably be more influenced by the local language, more trying harder, wanting to imitate the local pronunciation. So I just mentioned this because, in answer to the video from Lucas, I think that he has to try to project himself as an Argentinian. And it's easier for him and perhaps more attractive for him to project himself as an Italian or an American, let's say. That's fun. That's positive for him. He likes doing that. But yeah, he doesn't want to project himself as an Argentinian because the Spanish or whoever he speaks to, Paraguayan or whoever, neighbors of Brazil, because at some level he thinks they should be able to understand his Portuguese. He's not as motivated, and I see this in so many different areas. I see this, for example, where people from certain cultures like to consider themselves very unique, and therefore they're unwilling to let go of that cultural identity, that cultural ego, in order to project themselves into this other cultural identity. As I say, my father, you see people even from the same a language group, let's say French people, and some will pronounce English very, very well, and others make no concession at all to English. They speak English like this, and that is the way they will always speak it, because they, at some emotional level, they don't want to change. So I just want to get reaction from people on this. I think in so many things in language learning, our willingness, our emotional commitment to or resistance to certain things, our determination, our ability to project into another persona, these things are so important, far more important than diagrams of the mouth and where you put your tongue, or any other of these artificial learning tricks or tools or assists that you can find. So I guess the message there is to really look at your attitude and your emotional commitment to learning a language and to pronouncing that language, closer to the way it's pronounced. So I mean, I'd like to hear from Lucas. I think that's his problem. I think if you talk about learning a language, what does it mean to learn a language? A Portuguese person practically doesn't have to learn Spanish. They know 95% of the vocabulary, and the grammar is so similar that there's differences, but they're not great. So, I mean, they're basically there. So there's no reason why. And I don't believe those who say, well, because the pronunciation is so different, Portuguese, which has all these diphthongs, and Spanish, which has their very clear, pure vowels, that it's more difficult for that reason. I don't think it's difficult for those sort of technical reasons. I think it's difficult because, and the proof of that is, if you listen to someone like Benny, the Irish polyglot, or Luca, or Richard Simcott, they pronounce each of the Romance languages very well. They speak Portuguese very well, Spanish very well, Italian very well, French very well. So they are able to make all the different sounds. So the only reason a native speaker of Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese like Lucas, is not, is because he doesn't want to. I haven't heard him in Italian, but he pronounces English very well. So it comes down to this attitudinal thing. So, I think we can take a lesson from that and look at how that applies to our own language learning. Are we resisting at some level? Are we hanging back? Are we reluctant? Attitude is big. So I look forward to hearing your comments and maybe even hearing from Lucas on that. Bye for now.